This episode is brought to you by Paranormal Playback, a new podcast where hosts Shar, Mel and Laura recap the spooky and entertaining world of paranormal reality TV. Each week they take a fresh look at popular shows like Ghost Adventures and Kindred Spirits, blending humour with insight as they pull apart what's happening on screen. The three of them are a mix of believers and skeptics, which makes for really fun conversations, sometimes leaning into mystery, other times asking the questions viewers might be thinking themselves. With their background in creative production, they know how these shows are put together, so they're great at pointing out the moments that feel real versus the ones that might be more for the cameras. And their segment, This Old Haunt, digs into the true crime side of paranormal investigations, separating fact from fiction. With Halloween coming up, it's the perfect time to add something spooky, funny and a little addictive to your playlist. For even more spooky, ghostly, paranormal content with a humorous spin, go check out Paranormal Playback. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scary. If you don't know by now, my name is Will and each week I narrate your real life paranormal encounters, and if you have a paranormal encounter that you'd like me to narrate in the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com and it just might get narrated on a future episode. But before we get into today's episode, we have to say a special thank you to our new Patreon subscribers who are Alec Dolan, Sandra Davis, Taryn, Katrin, Katsy, Louise Robinson and Jed. Thank you so much for signing up to the Patreon, and if this is something you're interested in, you can find a link to the show's Patreon in this episode's show notes, or you can simply go to patreon.com/scaryaparanormalpodcast, where for $5 a month you can gain access to exclusive scary episodes. But now, let's get into our next paranormal encounter. You ever notice how some people just seem to attract strange things? Like, no matter where they go, no matter how normal their life is, the unexplained seems to follow them somehow. That's me. I don't know why. I don't have some deep connection to the spirit world, and I never asked for this. But ever since I was a kid, weird things have happened to me throughout my life. Things that I cannot explain. And some things that kept me up many nights. My experiences happened when I was very young. And initially I thought that everyone experienced what I did. As I got older, I realised that most people don't have experiences like I did. You know how people always talk about being afraid of the dark when they were kids? I wasn't. I never minded it. I'd sleep just fine with the lights off. No nightlight, no flashlight under the covers. Darkness never scared me. I'm not looking for an award. Darkness never scared me until I was about 6, maybe 7 when it started. We had just moved into a new house in North Carolina. It was a small single-story place in a very quiet neighbourhood. It wasn't creepy or old, just a normal house. My parents were thrilled because it meant I finally had my own bedroom instead of sharing with my older brother. And we fought a lot, so I suppose it was a bit of a relief for them. At first, everything was fine. But after a few weeks, I started to notice a few things. Every night after my parents put me in bed, I'd lay there staring at the closet door. I don't know why. It wasn't open. It wasn't making any noise, but something about it felt off. Like if I closed my eyes, something would step out, that type of feeling. The bizarre thing about all of this was we owned this closet. It had come with us from our previous home. One night I was half asleep when I heard a noise. A very, very soft creak. I remember opening my eyes, and I swear the closet door was gently moving by itself. Moving a couple of inches. As a kid, I was frozen in the bed. I stared at it for what felt like forever, waiting for it to move again, but it didn't. After a few moments, I eventually got up, ran across the room and shoved it shut, and then piled my stuffed animals against it, thinking that would keep it from opening again. But every night after that, I'd wake up at some point in the night and find that the door was cracked open, just a couple of inches. Never wide open, never swinging or moving, just slightly open. Looking back, to me it felt like somebody wanted me to know that they were there. Well, I didn't tell my parents at the time. I was 6. You get occupied with other things going on in your day, and your memory is pretty short, really. I suppose you nearly forget that something like that happened in the nighttime. You're just busy with your day. After a couple of weeks of this happening religiously every night, I mentioned it to my mom one day. Her response was, "It's just a draft." For context, this closet was not old, it was very basic, really. The night I told my mom about the closet, that night I told myself she was right. At some point I fell asleep and I woke up, and it was still before midnight, to this creak. When I turned over in the bed, I saw that the door was open again. This time it was wider than it had ever been. Maybe about 8 inches or so. And in the dark, I could see that there seemed to be somebody standing inside the closet. A tall shape, which I now debate in my mind as an adult whether it was exceedingly tall or just of average height. But to me, and still in my mind, it was a very tall shape that looked like a man. And this man was standing inside the closet, not moving, not breathing, just standing there. I could barely see his outline. There was enough light coming from underneath my door to leave a bit of light shining into the room. My parents mustn't have gone to bed yet. I remember sitting up in the bed and turning on the lamp. As my eyes adjusted, I wanted to scream. Standing in my closet was a man in his 60s with grey hair, short on the sides but fairly wispy on top. He had really dark eye bags, so dark it was like somebody had punched him. He was wearing this checkered shirt and his mouth was just slightly open, and he was just standing there staring at me in my bed. Eventually I just broke this connection with him and screamed my head off. I tucked my head underneath the covers and just screamed and screamed and screamed. Eventually my parents came busting into the room, flipping on the light, and eventually they coaxed me out from underneath the blankets. I didn't want to lift my head. Immediately when I knew my parents were there, I felt a little bit safer, and I let go of the blanket and pulled it down. Straight away I looked at the closet and he was gone. The closet was completely empty. I was crying too hard to even explain what I had seen. Eventually they said, it was a nightmare, come sleep in our bed tonight, it's fine. I didn't want to be in that room on my own at all. The next morning, when I went into my bedroom, my dad was after taking the closet door off the hinges. I don't know why. I really don't know why he did that. Maybe he thought that it would help. It really didn't. With the doors off, I just felt like that this guy was just standing in the closet. At least if the doors were on, I would be able to close them and probably put every single teddy I owned up against the door. The room was set up that my bed was not directly in front of the closet, but it was to my left. I came up with the idea of moving my bed so I wouldn't be looking right at the closet. Now the bed was beside the closet, and I was sleeping at the side of the bed that was furthest from it. I put all my teddies at the other side of the bed as if they were going to protect me. I was now sleeping with the door of my bedroom open, just to have a little bit of light in and for me to make a quick exit if I needed to. Did this work? Yeah, it did. It did work for quite a while. A few months later, I woke up again in the middle of the night to the sound of the closet door creaking. But like I said, there was no closet doors anymore. By now my parents had gone to bed, so the light from the hallway wasn't there. The room was in total darkness. I knew exactly where the lamp was, so I hit that immediately. My eyes slowly adjusted and I was staring over at the closet, where from around the corner this old man quickly peeped out. The same guy. I can still see his face. Same situation. I screamed my head off. Parents came in. I presume they thought it was a nightmare again. Nothing really happened. Eventually we settled into the neighbourhood and I made friends with some of the kids in the neighbourhood. There was a guy called Jake who became one of my closest friends. Eventually I told Jake about the man that I saw in my bedroom on 2 occasions, and he was really into it, but probably terrified about the idea of some adult man in your room as a kid at night time hiding in your closet. He must have told his mum, and one day his mother arrived over to our house. I overheard his mum and my mum having a conversation in the kitchen. and his mum saying to mine, "Are you guys settled in, and how's everything going?" And eventually I heard her tell my mum that Jake had said that I told him I had seen a man in my bedroom. I think she thought that we had an intruder, or at least that's what it sounded like. So Mum said to her, "No, I think it's just all to do with the move." And Jake's mother listened, and she turned around and said, "Oh, that's strange. You know a guy was murdered at the back of your house, don't you? Maybe that guy has some unfinished business." Not a cool thing to say, really, but I think that was her personality. I think she had a bit of a dark humour to her. Mom changed the subject and never brought it up with me, but I always remember hearing that conversation. My next experience that happened was when I was 15. One night in the house, we got a call. It was really late, maybe 2 or 3 a.m. I wasn't supposed to be awake. I'd been lying in bed, staring at my phone, listening to songs, when our house phone rang. I don't know why, but something in my gut told me to answer the phone. Hello? At first there was silence. Then, through the static, there was a voice, this soft voice, and I knew that voice. It was my grandmother. My stomach dropped. Our grandmother had been dead for over a year. I got so excited. I said, "Grandma?" And the line was just so static and crackly. And then her voice said, "I'm with Peter. I'm with Peter." That's all she said. Peter was my grandfather. And that night, he died. And then the line went dead. And this rush of adrenaline took over, and I ended up waking up the whole house, busting into my parents' room and telling them Grandma was on the phone. I was so excited and shouting about it so much that it took me a while before I realised that I had upset my mum, who was crying. The next morning we found out that my granddad was dead. Following his death, I received calls from an unknown number, mostly in the nighttime, like late at night. And it would be my grandmother's voice. I'd hear her voice saying hello. She had given me a nickname of Tiger for some unknown reason. And I could hear her just through the static saying, "Hello, Tiger." And she'd say it maybe 2 times, and then the line would go dead. This went on, like I said, for a couple of weeks, and at some point it started to scare me. No one believed me. I'd show my parents the unknown number that was calling me late at night. They got mad, took my phone off me. Once they took the phone off me, that's when I started to hear knocking. Not on the front door. I would hear knocking at my window, these slow, gentle knocks on the glass that would terrify me. There was no trees or bushes outside my window that would cause knocking on the glass. Eventually, one night I worked up enough courage to pull back the curtain, and there was nothing there, just darkness. I was a lot braver in the daylight, of course, and I'd check all around the house to see if there was footprints, and there wouldn't be anything there. Part of me believed it was my grandmother, or maybe somebody mimicking her. Eventually, I just shouted out of my room that I wanted it to stop and to please leave me alone. And that all stopped. My last weird experience that stays in my mind happened last year. I was between jobs, travelling, stopping in different places, picking up short-term work as I went along. I managed to get a job in a small cafe. One morning when I was opening up, it was really quiet, and I heard a voice say, "You look tired." I glanced up and there was a man sitting at one of the tables. I hadn't even seen him sit down. I hadn't heard the door open. I hadn't heard him pull out a chair. He looked normal, late 40s maybe. He had this worn denim jacket and thinning brown hair. He looked just like your average Joe. He had the kind of face you wouldn't look twice at in a crowd. I said, "Yeah, working hard." He nodded like he already knew that, and then he said, "Still heading north?" And my stomach dropped a bit. How did he know I was travelling? I hadn't said a word about myself at all. "How do you know that?" I said. And he smiled and said, "You always go north." I said to him, "Have we met before?" And he didn't answer. And then he said, "She tried to warn you, you know." At this point, I could physically feel my pulse hammer in my throat. "The call. You didn't listen." He really freaked me out. Eventually, I just changed the subject and said, "What can I get you?" And he said, "I'll just have a coffee, a black coffee." I said, "No problem. 1 second." I went in the back, turned to make the coffee, and when I turned around, he was gone. The place was completely empty. So I made my way to the door, and just as I put my hand on the door, I realised the door was still locked. I was opening up. There's no way anybody could have came inside. I don't know what he was talking about, whether he was referring to my grandmother and the calls I received when I was younger. I really don't know what his message was, but it scared the life out of me. Thank you, Mandy, for sending in your paranormal experience. I know there's many of you that have experienced apparitions and really weird paranormal phenomena. I just cannot wrap my head around what it must be like to actually see a ghost. The closest thing I've ever come to experiencing something in the paranormal that stands out to me is our family home. We had, and I've probably shared this already, we had some sort of spirit or being or entity, I don't know, upstairs, and they would walk across the floorboards in the same pattern. I don't think it was on particular days or anything, but we would hear very frequently, and eventually we had to get a priest in to bless the house, and once we did that, everything stopped. And I always remember my parents asking the priest, does he have to do this often? And his reply was, you wouldn't believe how often I have to come and bless houses because they have something weird going on. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, and why not join the Instagram page or the Facebook group? The links are in the episode show notes, and join me next time for another episode of Scary.